And one of the things I love about real estate is everything's been done. There's nothing new in real estate. All you got to do is figure out what you want to do, find someone else who's already doing that at the level at or above you want to, and copy what they're doing, right?
Yep. Hello and welcome to Pillars of Wealth Creation, where we talk about creating financial success with a special focus on business and real estate. I'm your host, Todd Dexheimer. Now, let's get to it. Hello and welcome back to Pillars of Wealth Creation. I'm your host, Todd Dexheimer. With me, I've got Andrew Cushman. Andrew, how are you doing today?
Not too bad. Good to be here.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me. A little bit about Andrew. He's a former chemical engineer who found his entrepreneurial calling in real estate. And in 2007, great timing, by the way, Andrew left his corporate position to start a business in real estate investments. And he was started off flipping houses in Southern California. And in 2011, transitioned to multifamily acquisitions. Now he's successfully syndicated and repositioned over 1,800 units and all kinds of some awesome. You're a ski instructor too, which is awesome. That's near and dear to my heart. Love backcountry ski. That's so cool. So maybe we can get into that too. But
oh yeah, I can talk about that all day.
I know I could too. Like I'm dreaming right now of going skiing. So so give our listeners a little bit more about your background. Like you left corporate position and probably if you're a chemical engineer, probably making a couple bucks. So take us through your journey a little bit and then we'll dive in.
Yeah. So, when I was in high school, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I had no idea how.
Yeah.
I didn't know what that was going to be. And so I figured, well, if I get a chemical engineering degree when I go to college, I did like chemistry and I liked problem solving and math and all that. So I said, well, if I get a chemical engineering degree, I'll always be able to find a job. I'll at least be able to tolerate it, and it'll have a decent salary. So I got the chemical engineering degree. Ended up working for a large food company for about 7.5 years. I got married along the way. My wife kind of had the same idea of, it'd be nice to have our own business. So we tried all kinds of other things, vending and making popcorn and reselling things and all that. And kind of realized that every one of those was just another version of a job. And especially living in a litigious state like California, I'm like, man, someone's going to break a tooth on a popcorn kernel and come sue us because they don't know how to chew and swallow properly.
Right.
Anyway, so then one day I saw an article in the Wall Street Journal about this guy flipping houses, and just happened to pick it, take it home. And we kind of read that, and then the person that he had learned from, we went and researched and said, hey, we could do this. So we actually bought a CD back when CDs were a thing.
Yeah, I remember driving around with the tape decks, putting the tape deck in my car.
Yeah. So we bought a CD course when that was like the greatest technology, and started doing it and realized, well, this is pretty difficult. So we went, and she used to hold as a local, not like a full guru, but like a kind of, she did classes of like 12 people in Sacramento, California. And so we went up and took that class, and then I was not originally good at it. So it took me, we were cold calling people in foreclosure, and it took me 4,576 phone calls and 6 months of doing that to finally get our first deal. But when we flipped it, we made about as much as I did all year at my chemical engineering job. So I said, all right, we said, this is it. There's no better, we don't have kids yet, and if we're going to do it, let's do it. So I quit, went full time. My wife quit 2 years later, went full time. And then we realized, hey, flipping's great, but you're only as good as your last deal. You make a buck and then you've got nothing to show for it. Not that it's a bad thing, but I mean, it's a great way to earn a living and have your own business. But we wanted something that lasted a little bit longer. And so we said, oh, well, hey, apartments, if you get monthly cash flow, and then also everyone was getting evicted. And so they weren't going to be able to buy a house, or foreclosed on. They weren't going to buy a house for another 7 to 10 years. And we had a huge recession, which means we're probably going to have a long expansion. So people can't buy houses, and we're going to have an expansion, which those two things told us apartments would do well. So we kind of did the same thing. We went and found someone to learn the game from. Our first deal was 92 mostly vacant units on the other side of the country in Macon,
Wow.
Georgia, which I would not recommend you do that as your first deal.
No, that's crazy.
And especially the mostly vacant part.
Yeah.
And 1800 years, 1800 units later, here we are in the business full time. It's been a great business and a great ride, and we certainly enjoy it. So
That's good. That's good. Let's unpack that a little bit. First of all, congratulations on doing 4,500 plus cold calls. Like that is nuts. That's insane. How there's so many people that would have just given up after the first, 450 cold calls. I mean, you threw another zero on that and you just kept on going. What motivated you to keep going instead of stopping at 450 or 1,000 or 2,500? Like, why did you keep going?
well, we really saw this as at the time flipping as our exit from the W-2 world. I'm a former engineer, and it's kind of stereotyping myself, but I'm not the guy who's going to create the next greatest app and 6 months later sell it for $1 billion to Google or Apple or whatever. I mean, that's not my thing. And one of the things I love about real estate is everything's been done. There's nothing new in real estate. All you got to do is figure out what you want to do, find someone else who's already doing that at the level at or above you want to, and copy what they're doing, right?
Yep.
So and that's what I loved about real estate. And so I said, well, look, I know this system works, and I know I want to quit my job. So it's simply a matter of me persisting long enough to get good enough at it so that it works for me, right? I'm the problem here, not the system, not the real estate. If I persist long enough to get good at it, then we're good. So that's why. And I started off not very good at it. So it just took a long time.
You said something there that is just so true. It meant many things, but you said, I'm the problem here. You realize that it wasn't necessarily the system that was broken. It was like, you just needed to get better at it. You just needed to make another 1,000 calls. You needed to keep on pushing on, and eventually you'd get those deals. You knew they were coming to you. You just needed to get better at what you did, needed to stay consistent with it and push on. I think that's where so many people break down, right? Is they go, I want to get into multifamily real estate. I'm going to buy my first 100 unit apartment or 20 unit, whatever it is. And they get discouraged and they give up after 6 or 12 months, and they don't continue to push on. They don't continue to go to where maybe it takes 18, maybe it even takes 24 months. But if you are consistent enough and you're persistent, you're going to get the deal done if you follow the proven strategy. Like you said, it's not like real estate is not just invented yesterday. It's not some crazy, you don't have to make a new tech app, right? You just have to follow somebody's direction. Maybe you can make a little tweak on it, right? To make it a little bit better, but that's just tweaks. That's it.
Yeah, I call it R&D, right? So in the corporate world, R&D is research and development, and to me, I say R&D stands for rip off and duplicate, right? not in a malicious way, because there's plenty of real estate for everybody, but you just go learn what somebody else is already doing and go duplicate it. Like you don't have to really figure anything out other than your own internal systems, and that's one of the things I love about it. So,
do you still flip houses?
Well, not really. It's probably been for a couple of years. We would maybe do 1 or 2 a year. If someone we actually had this happened. This has happened where we have someone who would call us, and they held on to a letter we sent them for like 6 years, right? They pulled it out of the drawer, and they're like, you sent this to us in 2010, and we're like, we want to sell now. And it's like, well, okay, sure, fine, So I mean, we've done maybe 1 or 2 a year over the years, and I think the last one was 2 or 3 years ago. I think the lifespan of our old mailers has finally petered out. So.
So no more flips. That's good. Let's talk about like getting into this business. And I normally don't hit that on this show, but I want to a little bit here, because you went from flipping and then all of a sudden you're about this 92 unit vacant, mostly vacant apartment complex. By the way, is just crazy in itself. Like, I don't know. I would yell at you if I was like mentoring you for the first deal. I'd be like, this is the stupidest thing you could do. But hey, it worked
Uh,
out. It worked out. You're
you know,
still here.
No, that's the funny thing is I had a mentor that who's a great mentor and actually is now a business partner. We've done like 6 deals together. And I look back on that and I kind of want, I'm like, man, what were you thinking? Giving me the green light on that thing.
Yeah.
Like
Why'd you let me
I'm
do that
lucky
thing?
we survived. Yeah.
That's great though. But you're here. You survived it. That's good. It worked out. But let's talk to the listeners, and they're wanting to buy that first 92 unit or 50 unit or whatever that might be. Like, take us back. How did you find the capital for it? Like, what did you do to prep yourself for that?
Not enough, candidly, but when we decided we wanted to get into multifamily, we kind of did we did a similar thing as we did for the single family flipping. So for single family, partly because I wasn't so good at it, we had a coach, right? So I'd make phone calls all week, and then I'd get on the phone with him and be like, okay, here's how it went. What would have you have said, and like that kind of thing. And so when we wanted to get into apartments, we actually asked him, so hey, do you know anybody who's in the apartment world? And he's like, actually, I do. And he connected us with a guy who at the time he had bought like 800 units, and so we hired him. And so he kind of, he was guiding us along, and we, as far as like finding the deal, we just said, okay, what are some markets that we think are going to do well going forward? And we kind of like Georgia and North Florida and the Carolinas, and that's still where we are today. And we just literally got on LoopNet, which is the commercial version, or at the time was the commercial version of the residential MLS. It's not a place you go to find good deals usually, but it is a good place to go find if you're completely new to a market and you don't know
Yeah.
who the brokers are and who's listing properties. It's a good place to start to at least find some people to call,
And
right?
to
And that's what
practice
we
analyzing deals too.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then because the best way to find a good deal is to look at 1,000 bad ones, right?
Yeah.
Because then when the really good one hits your inbox, you'll recognize it in about
Yep.
5 seconds.
Yep.
And and yeah, you just develop a gut instinct, and then you go verify it with the numbers. So we got on LoopNet. We found this, we literally found it. It at the time it had this cool map feature where you could literally just kind of as you just scroll around and the listings would pop up. So we started in Atlanta and followed the freeways out. And we came down to Macon, Georgia, and we realized there's this one at the time. This one particular broker controlled like 80% of the properties in Macon, and so we started talking with him. And one day he brought us this property, and on a spreadsheet it looked amazing. And our mentor actually had gone through town and toured it and said, yeah, I think it looks okay. Which again, these days I'm like, man, I don't know about that one, but uh, anyway, so yeah, so we it was 92 units. And this just to give you an idea of pricing at the time, it was 92 units. We bought that for $699,000, $699,500. So like
Wow.
$7,000, something
Yeah.
$7,500 or something crazy like that. And we what we the renovation budget was basically as much as the purchase price.
Which is still
And
nothing.
yeah. And so for all in, we needed 1.2 million, which of course we did not have.
Yeah.
And so we went out to syndicate that, and we said, hey, we've got some investors from our single family business. And we had two people that each had said they wanted to put in 400 grand. So we thought we were 2/3 of the way there. Turns out one of those guys never had it and eventually declared bankruptcy. And then the other guy, he wanted to be a full on partner. And we're like, that's a different game. We're not here for that. So that was one mistake we made, is we did not fully vet our investors.
Yep.
And so it took us 6 agonizing months to raise all the 1.2.
And the sellers stuck with you through that time.
Well, fortunately, we had built-in automatic extensions into the
Wow.
contract, meaning if we deposited another $15,000 of deposit, that could buy us 15 more days. And we had three of those built in the contract. So we automatically had 45 days built in. And then one of the things about the renovation is you don't do the renovation all day one. So
Sure.
we actually raised we got it closed, and then we
And then you
kept
could
raising after we closed. Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah. And was that an all cash purchase then because of the
It
conditions?
was because it
Yeah.
was in such bad shape, and then in 2011,
It just
they
wasn't the lenders.
the loans weren't there, which is part of why the pricing was at rock bottom, is because there was lending was almost, completely shut down for that type of thing, and you had to go buy cash. So
I liked that the investor story because very similar thing happened to me on my first deal. I thought it was going to be really easy to raise the capital. I had a couple investors tell me. I had one investor says, he's got $300,000. He's going to invest. I think he ended up investing, but I think he ended up investing like 30,000 or $50,000 or something like that. I had another investor that's like, yeah, I've got $1 million. I'm ready to roll. I want to put a bunch of capital in, and your stuff sounds exciting. Went to him and he invested nothing. And so I was very similar.
oh
I thought,
yeah.
oh, this is going to be really easy. I've got all this money. People are just ready to pour into my deals. And all of a sudden, between two investors that I think are going to that's going to be all I need, they put in like 50 grand total, and so very similar. You got to make sure you understand and really know who your investors are versus just assuming. And it sounds like both of us kind of did the same thing, both assumed.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, so tell me, is there a happy story at the end of this deal here?
There is. I mean, did get it turned around, and it was a C minus property in a C minus neighborhood, which for a variety of reasons we would never do anymore.
Yeah.
But when we bought it, the guy was collecting $8,000 a month. When we sold it, we were collecting like 34,000 a month, so like four something
Nice.
times. It was still a low income area, so not
Yeah.
not high
Yeah. Yeah.
rents. And we bought it for 699, and I think we sold it for 1.7. It was 1.7 something.
Okay.
So it wasn't a home run, but it was profitable, and we learned a lot. And I don't regret it because without doing that, we
Yeah.
wouldn't be here today with another 1,700 plus units. So it does have a happy ending, and it's interesting is the next deal we bought on the other side of town. We actually still own it, and I think we've pulled out and returned like 260 or 70% of the capital that
Oh,
was
that's great.
into it, and it still sits there in cash flows.
That's
So
great.
yeah, we learned our lessons and adapted and adjusted accordingly. So
Well, and that's what it takes. Look, I mean, sometimes you get into a deal and it's not exactly what you imagined, or maybe you shouldn't have potentially gotten that deal, but you're going to learn a lot from it along the way. And that's what it sounds like you guys did. So that's great. Uh, I guess along those lines, we talked about some mistakes already, but let's talk about what's a big mistake that you've made, or a mistake that you've made, and how have you learned from it? What can you teach our audience about that?
yeah, there's some common ones that I've made and that I see still happening a lot today. One is going for rough assets in rough areas.
Yes.
And almost everybody starts with those for two reasons. One, they look better on a spreadsheet, meaning because the pricing is lower, and because supposedly the renter is so much farther below market, and all these other things, it's really easy for Excel to spit out a high rate of return on assets like
Yep.
that. The second reason most people, again myself included, start there is it's easier to get those deals. There's fewer people looking at them,
Mm.
and they tend to be priced cheaper. Right. So as a new person, it's like, well, let's see, that's going to be easier for me to buy a $3 million deal versus a 5 million, right? Or 3 versus 10, or whatever that might be. So that was one mistake, was going into rough properties in rough areas. And it's not that you can make a lot of money on a rough property, but you can't because you can turn around a rough property. But you can't
Yeah.
turn around the neighborhood.
Right.
And you can only bring the property up to the level of the neighborhood. And if you try to bring the property above the neighborhood will tear it back down. And I've had that literal experience happen, on some of those very early properties in rough areas. So that's a mistake that I made, and I see common. A second one we already kind of talked about is vetting your investors. And really what kind of goes hand in hand with that is overly relying on on a couple of particular investors. Now, if it's somebody that's been, investing with you in another business for 10 years, or as a family member or something like that, that might be a little bit different. But if you're trying to raise $1 million and you've got two people you met a couple months ago that are coming in for 80% of it, that's a huge risk.
Yeah. Yeah.
Essentially what you want to do is you want to have, you know, 40 people who are all saying they're going to give you 50 grand each, right? Which is 2 million. And then that, and then that when it comes time to write the check, especially when you're first getting going, half of those aren't going to actually do it. So now you're down to the 1 million. So I always tell people early on, always quote raise double what you actually need. So if you
Yep.
need 2 million, make your target 4 million, because a lot of people won't perform, and then some just get cold feet. Other people, life happens, right? Oh, grandma needs, we need to move her to a home and I gotta spend the money on that, or whatever it might be, right? Stuff happens. So over raise. Now once you get established, you don't need to do that so much, or even at all. So that's one. And then the second is just underestimating renovations. And kind of a corollary to that, which is a big no-no, is saying, oh, I'm going to do renovations from cash flow. That is a
That's
recipe
huge.
for disaster. Yeah.
Yes. 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 If you're sitting here trying to passively invest in people's deals, you're listening to this, please don't invest in those. That deal,
No, definitely not.
we're going to be taking the cash flow, because look at our beautiful cash flow. We're going to, but and that's what people, I wholeheartedly agree with all three of those, and the starting in the rough areas. And so many, like you said, it's like the spreadsheet makes it look amazing, right? But that's the
Mm-hmm.
trick of those deals, right? The C class, the D class, like those deals. And plus the brokers are telling you this, oh, this is what you can do. Look at, this is amazing. They renovated these 3 units and you can just take this model and do it. Well, sure, it happened with 3 units for 2 months, but can it happen for all 100 units for 5 years, right?
Yeah.
The answer is probably no, right? But the pro forma looks really good. So we go, okay, let's buy this thing because it looks beautiful.
Pro forma is Latin for lie. So
right. And that's, yeah. So it's, I like those. I mean, those are great. That's some great tips for people to really stay out of muddy water. What you've been successful. You were successful in the flipping business. You transitioned into the multifamily syndication business, and obviously you've built a pretty solid company, 1,800 plus units. So kudos to that. What's been some of the key success habits that you guys have implemented that you think run to your success?
well, I mean, this gets back to getting started, but one is relentless persistence.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's one of the phrases that you'll hear me say a lot is no deal is better than a bad deal. And having the discipline to not do deals just because we feel like we need or want to.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
So many
and then
people are doing that, right?
oh geez, I see so much stuff getting done because they can do it, not because they should.
Yeah.
And no, also, some other people also have different investment goals or to have different capital needs. If you have
Right.
capital that only needs a 6% return for the next 10 years, then yeah, and that's far easier to do that, right? So you
Yeah.
can maybe pay more, or maybe you've got a 1031 exchange. Okay, yeah, it makes sense for you. You can pay more for that deal, or but it gets more into just crazy assumptions that have worked for the last 5 years, but might be
They're
a little
going to
bit more
continue.
questionable. Yeah, at this point in time. So that relentless persistence and just having the discipline. One thing that I did recently that I wish I would have done far earlier is started expanding our core team and delegating some of the just the stuff that is involved in running a business, and looking at hundreds and hundreds of deals. I mean, if you're one person, you can only look at so many of those. You only have so many hours in the day. And so that is something I wish I would have done earlier, was bring on more team members. We did bring on a manager, like an office manager, admin person, 6 or 7 years ago. but we didn't bring on uh, acquisitions and asset management people until probably about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago. And that's been transformative. It's really helped us improve our systems and a lot of aspects of the business. And so that's something that, again, I wish I would have done, years earlier. So
Yeah. I can't agree more with that. Expanding your team, man. I think a lot of us is just in our habit, right? Or in our nature to
mhm.
like think we can do it ourselves, and we don't want to bring other people in. Or, it's part of me sometimes too is like, oh, I don't want. Am I ready to bring somebody in because I don't want them to not be busy enough, and so you hold back and wait when you should have pushed forward. You should have got that person in.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, and what I found too is like once you have somebody who's, as long as you've made a good hire
yeah,
or a good add to the team, you will and they show up and they have, the the fit and the attitude and the approach, is you'll find, oh wait, this person can do this and this, they can
right.
do this. Or and they, and many, and the couple of people that we brought on, they keep finding stuff like, hey, we could be doing this. I'm like, that's a great idea. Or like, oh, I've been wanting to do that for 5 years. So it kind of fills the void if you bring on the right person. And then also I would say, a lot of people listening are probably like, that's great with 1,800 units or whatever, but I'm just trying to get my first one. I'm not hiring salary, and that's absolutely correct. But keep in mind, adding to your team can be as simple as getting a virtual assistant for 10
Right.
hours a week.
Yeah.
It can be, maybe it can be partnering with somebody who has skills and resources that maybe you don't or don't have as well, right? So there's different ways to grow your team without just saying, okay, I'm going to start paying this person $90,000 a year, even though I can't afford it. And I would also say is, even if that is the route that for whatever reason you feel you need to go, keep in mind that's only a commitment for a certain amount of months, right? It's not, you don't write someone a check for 90 grand and then they're going to work for you for 12 months. You typically pay bi-weekly or monthly or whatever. Um, so that was definitely a self-imposed limitation that I had of what it looks like to build a team. In my head, I had to, add all these big salaries every time I wanted somebody, and that's not really how it works. It can work that way, but it doesn't have to.
Yeah.
So that, don't, when if you're sitting there listening to this saying, oh, I'm just trying to get my first deal or get my second deal or whatever, yeah, you don't have to go hire a C-suite executive team. You can find partners, virtual assistants, admin people, and do it bit by bit. So.
Yeah. Great advice. There's so many people out there, and the key I think is you have to start hiring before you think you're 100% ready. You just have to. And I get a lot of questions for people who have full-time jobs, and how do I do it? And it's like, well, if you start delegating some of that stuff, if you start hiring that VA to do X, Y, and Z, now you have time, right? They've already underwritten the deal, and they only send you the good ones. Now you
Yes.
right, you cut out 85, 90%, maybe even more of the junk, and now you're left with the 10% to look at. Now you have 3 deals to look at, and that's it. Big difference.
And that helps your ability to persist too. Because let me tell you,
Yeah.
it gets frustrating for me. I'm like, okay, this
Yeah.
is literally the 275th property we've looked at, so that doesn't work. So when number 276 hits my inbox, I don't get excited. I'm just like, great, I'm going to waste another 30 minutes
Other one.
looking at this.
Yep.
So when you get to the point where you can change things up, so that no, if it's getting passed up to me, it at least has potential. That helps your morale and your
Yeah.
ability to persist. So
Yeah, because I mean, you got to look at a lot of deals, like you said earlier. I mean, you've got to look at, I don't know what the number you said earlier, where you're looking at 1,000 deals to get one. I mean, that's just how it is. You're going to look at a lot of deals just to get one, and if you think you're going to find a deal by looking at 5, well, good luck. You're probably going to be overpaying for for the pro
yeah,
forma.
yeah. I mean, oh yeah, that's true. I mean, you can get a deal on your first call if you're willing to if you're willing to pay certain prices. So.
Right. What what's a favorite? We're gonna shift completely here. What's a favorite book that you can recommend to our listeners?
It's popped up a lot lately, but it is a really good one, especially if you're doing to me are kind of high stakes negotiations on multifamily. And that's Never Split the Difference,
Oh,
the
I like
Chris
that book.
Voss's book that came out.
Yeah.
I actually have reviewed that probably 4 or 5 times this year. I've made notes and highlighted stuff, and then I would combine that with. And this is the book that I read and that was critical to us breaking into the single family flipping business, was Jim Camp's Start With No.
Hmm.
It came out right around 2000, I think, or something like that. But actually, Chris Voss references that book a lot in his book, so that the two go together very, very well. And those are the ones I would recommend. And then a third is another real old one: How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah, one of my
All of
favorites.
this, whether you're talking about whether you're dealing directly with owners, brokers, contractors, property management people, it's all relationship based.
Yeah.
The spreadsheet is critical, but it's actually a small part of the business. It's really relationship based.
Well, 100%. You just hit like the very tip of the iceberg. Dealing with your brokers, but you're dealing with the property managers, you're dealing with your contractors, you're dealing with the on-site staff. You've got to make sure you're building those relationships and keeping them strong, and you've got to be able to have your vision match their vision, or what they think your vision is. And I find a lot of people get that wrong, myself included. Like, I just assume people want to do what I want to do at the property, but I haven't even told them what I want to do. Or maybe I
Yeah,
have kind of, like one day I said kind of what I want to do, but we haven't really gone into detail. It's not even written down. And I just somehow assume that like they can see what my brain is envisioning and they're going to follow through. And then you get mad when they don't do it. It's like, well, how short-sighted are we sometimes by just assuming that? So those books are great for really helping you understand some of that stuff.
definitely.
So, how do you like to give back?
We support. I'm not really good at giving back with time, but we financially support a pretty good array of charities, both worldwide and local. Large, some through our church, others just that we've gotten connected with or met over time. And I do want to give a shout out to. Tim Rode, one of our early mentors, he started a charity called One Life Fully Lived,
Hmm.
and basically, what they do is like the financial wisdom that people like you and I have learned and gained over the years. He brings that to like inner city high school kids, so that they can see that, yeah, not everyone gets to start from the same place, but and it's not some people it's easier than others, but everyone can learn this stuff and everyone can improve from where they are. And he brings like all of the stuff that like you and I know and have experienced and have had success with. He brings that to people who might not otherwise get those opportunities and get exposed to that, and makes a big impact on people. So
Yeah, that's really cool, because just that one life like that's affected, right? You just that one life that gets affected, that person that says, wow, like I don't have to continue in this this you know avenue that I am right
mhm.
now. Like I can go this different direction. Somebody inspire that person to go a different. That's really cool. Definitely changes. I'm sure changes many people's lives. So love it.
Yep.
And by the way, you're giving back right now by being on this podcast, so that's awesome too.
You're right. Everyone says that, so I'm like, well, yeah, but yeah.
No, that's great. That's good stuff. Good stuff. I think that's one of my goals, missions, is to make just to do a lot of positive impact, that the most we can in this world. And it's great to hear what other people are doing as well. So everybody does it their own way and has
Yep.
their own process, and it's fantastic. So I got one last question before we wrap up. Last question: what are your 3 pillars of wealth creation?
Have good offense, good defense,
Ooh.
and then enjoy the game.
Oh, I love them. I love them. Nobody said that to me before. That's good stuff.
Yeah, so offense is how are you creating wealth and how are you bringing it in, right? Are you flipping? Are you excelling at your W-2 job? Are you buying multifamily? Are you starting a business? Whatever that might be, and getting really good at what your offensive position is, right?
Yeah.
So offense is going out and creating wealth and creating income and bringing it in. Defense is holding on to it, right? Not, spending wisely, investing wisely. Because we've all met the person who makes $500,000 a year and they're broke,
Right.
and they're paycheck to paycheck, right?
Yeah.
That's good offense and poor defense,
defense.
which leads to a losing game, right? And then enjoy the game, meaning stop along the way. Like, Todd, you just said, forget it, we can go spend a few weeks in Florida, right? Enjoy, taking the time along the way to enjoy the fruits of your labor and the benefits of what you brought in, and sharing it with others. And like I don't know if we had hit record or not yet, but we talked about, we both love to ski. I love to surf, things like that. Take the time to, as Stephen Covey, I think it was him, says, sharpen the saw, right? And, because there's no guarantee that any of us has tomorrow. So yeah, we want to plan for the long run, but stop and enjoy along the way. So
yeah, so true. So good stuff, man. Andrew, really enjoyed this conversation. Could probably keep on talking to you for a long time. But really, appreciate you, first of all, just sharing and inspiring your story. I loved hearing the 45 plus 100 letters that or calls that you made just to get that first deal. That's awesome and amazing. Of course, I loved hearing the story of you buying a 92 unit, basically vacant building. That's just wild. And so happy it actually worked out for you, and you're still like here and not like back to your W-2 job.
That first deal is part of why I started going gray about that time, but it's all right. It was worth it.
It was worth it. But look, it shows what you talked to us about, and just that relentless, persistence and consistent effort, that discipline to keep going, and that discipline to also probably, you've learned a lot from those early deals, and now you're disciplined enough to pass on some of those deals and just be persistent and continue to get the deals that you really want to have in your portfolio. So that all great stuff. And of course, I love the three pillars: the good offense, the good defense, and then of course, enjoying that process throughout. So really good stuff. I appreciate your time, and I don't, what you've brought to our show. How can our listeners get in touch with you, learn about, what you got going on, connect?
Yeah, I'm on all the various social media platforms, LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook and all that kind of stuff. Probably the best way though is just our website. Well, if you Google Vantage Point Acquisitions, it should be the top listing, but the website is just vpacq.com. And there's a variety of tabs on there. Contact us. There's some information about our multifamily mastermind. The best way to connect is just submit, the contact us form on the website. It comes into my email address, and we can have a conversation from there.
Love it, man. Again, really appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
All right. It's good talking with you, Todd. Take care.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. I appreciate you being a loyal listener. I would love to have you go on to our Facebook page and subscribe, give us a thumbs up, go on to iTunes or wherever you listen and give us a rating and review. Don't forget to subscribe. Your rating and review just helps us push this out to more and more people and continue to grow our audience, and hopefully positively affect a ton of people out there that really need this and want this. So the other thing I've got for you is a free ebook on my website. So go on to venturedproperties.com, and download our free ebook on real estate and on syndication. And I've got some data points in there, some really good stuff for you. So I'd love to have you take a look at that. It's free. I'm not expecting anything from it. And also, look, if you want some help in multifamily, want some help learning, growing, getting your business off the ground, I would love to talk to you about what it would look like to work with me potentially and see if that's a good fit. So you can go to coachwithdex.com and check that out. And we can definitely have a call. Thanks a lot for listening. You make it a fantastic rest of the day. I'll catch you on the next episode.